Uniformed personnel, attend. Hut. Present. Or.
Please be seated. I learned in class today that, or the other day, from a military friend, the term semper gumby means to be flexible. And like today's event, there's things that happen to move around, so we all need to be flexible and kind of step into when it's our turn. You will be hearing engines may have, can you guys hear me in the background? Okay, a little bit better. Thank you, Tim. So you guys may hear engines leave, you may hear radios go off. We still have a 24/7 business that we do, but I'd like to recognize Bailey Bernard for the national anthem. You can get her around the applause. And the Vallejo Fire Department's Honor Guard personnel for their first presentation of the evening. Give them a round of applause. My name is Chris Campbell. I'm a battalion chief with the City of Vallejo Fire Department. I'm the best shift ever, the A shift. I just wanted to make sure we throw that out there. This group of individuals here on the A shift did an awesome job today, spending most of their mornings not only doing the normal task of what a firefighter does, checking out their equipment, but setting all of this up and getting this event ready for you guys. And it's not just the A shift, but as you can tell, many members of the Vallejo Fire Department coming in down there on time. If you haven't already, please feel free to take a seat. There's a lot of open chairs here. We just want everybody to feel comfortable if you can. If you have any issues where somebody needs to use the restroom or any other needs, you see all these personnel here, except for the guys with the red on them. They're going to be busy this event. But any other personnel here in fire department uniforms will be happy to assist you with anything you need. I'd like to take a few minutes to recognize some of our dignitaries that I saw in the audience today. So please welcome Mayor Bob Sampine. Stand up. City Manager Greg Now. Council members Jess Malgalpo. Council member Katie Meisner. Council member Pippendu Costa. I have a representative here from Congressman Mike Thompson's office, Mel Rapila. I believe we saw a school board member, Dr. Tony Ubaldi. I'd also like to recognize one of our longtime supporters for police, fire in the city, Kenny Ross. He didn't expect that. And the current police and fire chief, and we all know where his true heart lies on the fire side, he's getting. But Chief Andrew Badu. I believe that's everybody that I saw. If I missed anybody in the audience. Oh, sorry. Rosanna, council member. Got all that good stuff there. So, people coming in and didn't get some names on here, so sorry if I missed you. Again, I would like to thank everyone for attending. I ask that you respect everyone around you in their participation in today's events by please pulling out your cell phones, putting them on silent, or if you can, turn them off during today's event. I'd like to kind of respect that some people are busy and this may not be an option for you. You may have to leave your cell phone on. So if you do have to answer your phone during today's events, could you kind of exit and move towards the back of the dance here so that we don't interrupt somebody else. To start our event today, again, Fluid. The Honor Guard did their presentation led by the National Anthem for Bailey Bernard. And we're going to have a couple guest speakers. Our first guest speaker today is going to be Mayor Bob Stanton.
Good morning.
Morning, morning.
September 11th, 2018, Patriot Day. How many of you remember what you were doing when this tragic attack happened? Could I just have a show of hands? You know, as I look back, I kind of want to share in the remembrance of this solemn day. A day where we reflect on the horrific attacks in New York, on the Pentagon, and in a field in Pennsylvania where many, many innocent lives were lost. And as we reflect and mourn the loss of these many lives, we also need to thank and celebrate those who keep us safe, that keep us safe each day, our public safety. Our military, who's also represented here. You know, I believe none of us will ever forget that day, and it was one of the most tragic days in American history. A day where our nation fell silent to an attack that attempted to break our spirit. A day where many Americans lost their lives to a vicious attack on our home soil. An attack that I pray will never be forgotten. And today we honor those lives, you know, those lives of those lost, but also the lives of those that gave theirs so that others could live. You know, I believe that all of you remember that day, and will always remember that day. I was asleep when the phone rang, and it was my wife. I had worked a night shift, and the phone rang, and it was my wife, and I'll never forget her words. She said, "They're gone. The World Trade Center towers are gone." You know, and I tried to comprehend what she was saying, and she said, "Get up, go turn on the TV." So I walked out the living room, turned on the TV, and I saw what she was talking about. I watched in horror as that second tower fell. And my first thought was, how? And why did this happen? And then another image immediately filled my senses and will forever be etched in my mind. And it was watching the masses running from the collapse, but seeing fire and police officers running towards it. And it was then I learned of the attack, and shortly thereafter the news spoke about the lives that were lost. We all learned that there were approximately 3,000 people that were lost in the attacks. And out of those 3,000 people, 412 were emergency workers. Out of that 412, 343 were firefighters. 69 were police officers. You know, these are brave men and women that come to work as they normally do, expecting to go home at the end of their shift, but 412 didn't. These first responders, these heroes, did what they do on a day-to-day basis. They keep us safe while risking their own lives. They ensure our survival by rescuing those in distress. 412 died doing what they do to keep us safe. We should never, ever, ever forget these brave souls. And we should always hold them dearly in our hearts. You know, as we observe today as Patriot Day, we also praise Vallejo's dedicated firefighters and police officers. Their dedication to our community, to our residents, for keeping us safe by putting themselves in harm's way when we call for help. To our public safety, to our military, I thank you for your service. I thank you for your dedication. But most of all, I thank you for being Vallejo's finest. To the residents of Vallejo, to the people in the audience, to those young people that are here today that were not born when this attack occurred, please thank your public safety. Please thank them for keeping our community safe. And please, please remember those that lost their lives on this day 17 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our second guest speaker today is going to be City Manager Greg Knight.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So thank you for all of you attending. And when I parked, I saw all those young men and women showing up today to show their respects and appreciation for what we all remember from this day. And so thank you, young men and women who, it looks like most of you were not born on September 11, 2001 yet. So thanks for being here to remember. For me, I think that each and every one of us have a memory of that day. And they stay with us. They don't leave us. So I'm just going to say some very, very brief comments that I think that stir through my memories as I think of this day. And I want to start by saying to those in the military that are with us today, thank you. I happened to be at Fort Carson Army Base when this day came, and those serving at Fort Carson were locked down on their base, and we had their children at my house with my wife Cindy. And so we had to take care of them that day, and their lives changed dramatically that day as well. And so thank you for being here, men and women of our military. So I want to say to you that September 11th, before that day, 2001, we all knew firefighters and police officers and first responders. We all knew them. We all appreciated what they did. But that day, we heard that hundreds were trapped. And hundreds more were still coming. Etched in our memories, in my memory, is this emotion of grief and anger. Those subside with time. They're not erased, but they subside with time. But what did we commit to on September 11, 2001? That we would never forget. What we never forget is courage, selflessness, sacrifice, resilience. I will never forget the picture that day of people fleeing from the scene. And I happened to pull up a picture this morning just to help me remember what that day was like. Chaos, but in the midst of that flight, were none other than first responders selfishly going towards the scene. Today, let us reestablish our vows to never forget, to show appreciation to full support the men and women who serve in public safety, our police officers, and our firefighters. Let us remember the sacrifice of many. Please say thank you to the men and women who serve in our military, to our first responders, our police officers, and our firefighters. They're serving us throughout the city. They serve us throughout the state and throughout this country. They are responding to our critical needs. They are responding when we are fleeing away or need their help. So today I just want to ask that we all remember that day. We promise to never forget. Let us never forget the men and women in uniform who serve us, whether they're in the military or our first responders. Let us not forget. And in a time when sometimes I wonder about the support of our communities for men and women who wear these uniforms and respond to us, let us support them every day, every single day. So thank you to the men and women of Vallejo Police and Fire Department. Thank you to the Fire Department for putting this evening on. Thank you, Battalion Chief. And thank you for all being here, and let us never forget.
Our third speaker today is going to give us a brief history of 9/11, and please welcome Engineer Kevin Brown.
Good morning. On this date, 17 years ago, the lives of every American was altered forever. The morning started with a 767 hijacked and converted into a missile used to strike the North World Trade Center tower. Soon, a second hijacked aircraft struck the South Tower. This began a day of inconceivable events that accumulated into the loss of thousands of lives, a permanent scar in the New York City skyline, and a country that felt stuck in a painful moment that would never pass. In total, 412 first responders perished while attempting to save trapped and injured individuals in Lower Manhattan. In Washington, D.C., a third plane struck the Pentagon, killing another 125 civilians and government employees on the ground. A fourth hijacked aircraft crash-landed in rural Pennsylvania, killing 37. In total, 265 souls lost their lives on 4 separate aircraft. As firefighters, our training classes often begin with a story and a picture of a New York City firefighter and how their morning started as they answered their final alarm on September 11, 2001. Like Battalion Chief Oreo Joseph Palmer, a 45-year-old father of 3 who led a team of firefighters to the 78th floor of the South Tower to evacuate trapped victims. The tower collapsed before Palmer was able to escape the building. Or 54-year-old Peter James Gansey Jr., who served in the 82nd Airborne Division in Vietnam. Gansey stood near the base of the towers in order to assist with directing rescue efforts. Gansey had just instructed Mayor Giuliani to leave the area. Moments later, the South Tower collapsed, claiming Gansey's life. Heroes were not just first responders, however. On Flight 93, passengers learned of the attacks that had already occurred in New York City and Washington, D.C., prompting them to hold a vote to revolt and retake the aircraft. While it has been difficult to identify which passengers involved in the attempt to retake the plane, audio recordings from the black box confirm passengers were able to break through the cockpit door using a food cart as a battering ram. Audio recordings further confirm an intense struggle between heroic passengers and hijackers, lasting for the final 30 seconds of the plane's descent into a field in Stony Creek, Pennsylvania. I imagine every person here that is old enough can recount exactly where they were on that morning. You can probably recall how you responded in the days and weeks that followed. Many Americans chose to give blood or donate funds to assist families stricken by this tragedy. Others welcomed stranded travelers into their homes, while the aircraft while air traffic was grounded. First responders and civilians alike flocked to Ground Zero to provide whatever assistance they could, sifting through rubble by hand because the risk of secondary collapse was too high to allow heavy equipment to remove debris. In total, 12 survivors were pulled from the collapse area. Many were pinned beneath concrete and twisted steel, requiring lengthy and intricate extrication procedures. Fires burned in Lower Manhattan for 99 days following the attacks, and it took 9 months to remove the 1.8 million tons of wreckage from the World Trade Center site. Many persons here today can tell you that it was this event that drove them to become a firefighter, police officer, or paramedic. While this event is remembered as the greatest tragedy in recent American history, it is also the story of our resiliency. A terrorist group determined to destroy us only unified us. An event that led to family members never returning home ultimately brought us all together as one great family. We put aside our lesser squabbles and disagreements and collectively determined to help one another through the unbelievable heartache. The lasting effects of this mournful day can be seen today, right here, in this gathering. Nearly 2 decades have passed, but this group, and many others like it, refuse to let the positive lessons of 9/11 fade. Thank you.
Thank you again, Kevin. The next speaker we're going to have today is going to come up and give a presentation on the history of the Vallejo Fire Department. He's a long-term friend of mine, and he's a retired fire engineer from the City of Vallejo Fire Department. Please welcome retired engineer Gilbert Baez.
Hello, testing 1, 2, 3. Is it working? Is it working? It's a little bit of a bittersweet day for me, as 17 years ago I was upstairs in that dormitory right there when I got the phone call that said, hey, turn the TV on. It came from Miami-Dade firefighter telling me the plane had hit the towers. I told everybody what was going on. We all went downstairs, turned on the TV, and oh my God. I lost 4 firefighter friends, personal friends of mine, because I was an FDIC instructor, and they were in the towers. One of them, Dana Hannon, worked last night on his shift trade. Gave his fiancée a kiss goodbye, said, I'll see you tomorrow night. He never came home. They never got married. And to this day, she's an active nurse in New Jersey, and she's never married and never dated since. I've been with the Vallejo Fire Department for 27 years. I also served 4 years in the United States Air Force as a firefighter. I was a part of the Valentine's Day massacre here in the city of Vallejo in 2008. The uniform that I'm wearing is a night jacket. It's one of the few that are worn by the department. I had the opportunity to get a double-breasted coat like everybody else, but I chose not to because it wasn't the history or the tradition that I came up with. You'll see a few of them around, but you won't see many of them around. Our fire stations and these firefighters are preparing you just the way they did in 1859 when the city of Vallejo started their fire department. What's cool about it is that they prepare every single day for everything that they can possibly try to imagine, and yet they never know what they're going to get or what they're going to receive as far as the call is concerned. Certainly we can go back through time and read the newspapers and the articles that are on the newspapers. And I've done just that. Pretty amazing archives, actually. In case you were wondering about fires and emergencies back then, this city has always been on fire. No kidding. On fire all the time. And it's the history of the human lives and the firefighters that make our history so great. You can't have a history of the Vallejo Fire Department without recognizing the men and women who make up the department and the labor aspect that made it what it is today. The dedication of the department started in 1859. Next year will mark our 160th year. And if you look on these fire trucks, they're all led with a number, 21, 22, 23, 24. That's because that makes us the second oldest fire department in the county. Benicia beat us by 3 years. They organized in 1856. Who would have thought Benicia would have beat us? But whatever. But remember, this department didn't start because somebody said, hey, how cool would it be if we had a fire department? It didn't work out that way. In 1858, fires destroyed a lot of older buildings in Vallejo, including the State House. Subsequently, in 1859, the citizens of Vallejo formed the Hook and Ladder Company No. 1. They started with 53 volunteers, and in 1865, the Vallejo Volunteer Fire Department, was formed. In 1872, the Neptune Hose Company was formed, and then the Phoenix Engine Company was formed shortly thereafter. In 1876, Vallejo's worst fire at the time started in a restaurant on Georgia Street. It burned 15 buildings. Buildings weren't easy, and fires weren't easy to stop back then. In 1892, Vallejo formed the Hartford Hose Company No. 2 and Sheridan Hose Company No. 3. In 1899, a city charter established the mayor. Where'd he go? There's your history. A police department and a fire department. In 1906, the Great San Francisco earthquake rocked the Bay Area, and Vallejo received over 38,000 refugees from the city of San Francisco. Also that year, the city bought horses and hired 3 men on salary for the department at $85 a month. And if you go back to 1906, those guys were making some money. The volleys continued until 1912. Also in 1906, the city of Vallejo, the city of Suisun, was nearly destroyed by a fire. Who came to their rescue? Vallejo firefighters sent a motorized pumper engine by railroad car because it was the quickest and saved the town. It was the first mutual aid in the county with the other departments in our county. In 1919, the Vallejo Fire Department was established, and it became important to know how to tie a knot. At Mare Island, when launching the USS California, a super dreadnought, a cable, gave way, and the ship completely floated across the channel and into the ferry slips. That little mishap destroyed the slip and all the boats attached to them, and Vallejo's first water park was formed and abolished at the same time. In 1920, Vallejo Fire Department purchased the Seagrave pumper, very first. World War II came to us in 1941, and so did people, all assigned to Mare Island and living in Navy housing. Our naval claim to fame: the USS Indianapolis left Vallejo on a secret mission. It picked up 2 nuclear bombs in San Francisco that were used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That ship is also famous for being sunk by the Japanese in shark-infested water. And many of the lives that were lost on that ship lived here in City of Vallejo, and in Fairfield, and in Benicia. In 1944, the Port Chicago ammunition explosion killed 326 men, and then 282 of them were black. Sailors that survived were court-martialed for mutiny for not wanting to go back into the unsafe conditions. The blast was so big that the windows in Vacaville were blown out, not to mention the damage, the heavy damage of destruction of Crockett, Benicia, and Vallejo. As the department goes, the next biggest thing that happened to the City of Vallejo, and the City of Vallejo Fire Department, and the City of Vallejo Police Department was the strike of 1969. And you might call that a labor issue right now, but it's not. It's part of the history of the Vallejo Fire Department. It happened the day after we landed on the moon. It was when the Zodiac was cruising through town killing people, and he had already got 2 people out on Blue Rock Springs, doing things in Napa and things like that. We used to have a police officer here, his name was Gene Myron. He would come into the fire station when I was a rookie, and he told me about what it was like to be here during the time of the Zodiac. They got a call from the Zodiac. He was at the phone booth in front of the old Ace Hardware that's on Tuolumne in Tennessee. And they dispatched Gene to it in his patrol car, and when he got there, the phone was hanging, swinging. They just missed him. That's how close we were to getting him. That's how close the police department came to getting that guy. But that wasn't the first strike that happened in the city of Vallejo. In 1876, the state legislature stopped firefighter exempt laws that let firefighters do certain things in certain communities with tax breaks and this, that, and the other. The firefighters here got so upset, many of them quit, and the city had to go to a standby organization, meaning they had people who were non-union walk the streets of Vallejo. And if there was a fire, they could try to call it in, send it in, dispatch for it to do what they had to do. A work stoppage was declared for 7 days, several days, and then everything came back to normal. For 5 days in 1969, the city was without police and fire. Governor Reagan ordered CDF and CHP to cover the city along with management and non-union officials. Scary times. And why? Well, the real question is, first, why did the police and fire have to privatize? Why did they have to organize previously? The reason is the same as it is today. We are oath to preserve life and property. Those that are elected are not. They have not and will not take care of you. You are a number to them, and that is all you are. I speak of the leaders of the city over the years. Those firefighters and police officers that went on strike were asking for some basic services, reduction of hours, and a small raise. The city attorney at the time, Gerald Davis, said, if they don't like what we're offering them, they can quit. And quit they did. It was a part of wages and working conditions. The fire and police did not ask for the pie in the sky. They just asked for something fair. It was just fair. That's the history of the Vallejo Fire Department. That's the history of the Vallejo Police Department. Without upsetting the CDF and CHP unions, Governor Reagan ordered the members to only fight fires if there was a fire, and CHP would only do field traffic violations. Union solidarity was strong in Vallejo in all aspects of labor, and unions abstained from crossing our picket lines for those 5 days. After the 5 days, the city agreed to a contract for 3 years with a 1% raise in pay. Shortly thereafter, a citizens group got together and they put binding arbitration in the charter. They put it to a vote and the citizens voted for it and it became a part of the charter. That process allowed the unions and the city to come together for fair treatment of its employees. The unions preserved over the years because the city always said no to fairness, and subsequently, all labor groups would end up in arbitration. Arbitration is the key to our growth and fairness. To this day, the city still denies duty claims to firefighters and police officers. There's a guy on duty, got denied his cancer rights because the city said, well, we're not really sure if it happened here. I got to call BS on that. I was with him at the fires. I've been with him. And I've been retired 10 years. Many will say it's not the city, but their insurance company. Well, who hires the company? We're still making history, folks. From campaign fires to local fires, bodies are being sacrificed. On this day, we remember the sacrifices of 343 firefighters from New York City. And FYI, more firefighters have died because of the rescue efforts working the pile than actually died on the day that the planes hit the towers. But we also must remember our sacrifice in our daily shifts in service. Our city is just like the city of New York. Deny workman's comp until the cows come home. I think their motto is sacrifice your life for us, and if you live, we'll deny your claim. Employee groups are tired of being used, abused, and degraded. So when you want to claim to be dedicated to the city and be that city slicker, remember this. The city didn't give you anything. The unions got it for you. The proudness that you wear in those uniforms of police officers, the unions got those for you. And a lot of people went on strike for it. Recently, this fire department got a raise. They didn't get a raise. They got an IOU. We got an IOU because money was taken away from them during the course of this last 10 years. It used to be when people would knock down the doors and be at the fairgrounds, hundreds of them, to take the test to get hired by the city of Vallejo. Because we were diverse, we were well paid, and we had a lot of fires and activity in the city. Now to this date, the last graduating class had 3 people in it. 3. They're still understaffed. We do what we do, and our heritage shows our integrity as a group. Not everything is beautiful in our occupation and careers, but we are living the history we are making. Serve the citizens you protect, and remember to protect yourselves and your families. That is our history, and that is our claim. We're steep in tradition in the Vallejo Fire Department and all around this country. As a fire department, we must learn from our mistakes. A wise man will recognize a mistake when it's getting ready to happen again. To our citizens, we proudly serve you, and at a cost. In return, please serve us proudly. When I think about the day 911 and coming out here, It was hard when we had to go back, and I had to go back for funerals. The guy Dana Hannon, who was fianced, who didn't come back. They found his face piece. They found a piece of his turnouts, and it had skin and tissue in there, and that's how they could identify that it was Dana. For those of you that don't know, when they did a burial and they found somebody's body, they may have had a funeral service for them. But then they found more parts of their body later on, so some of those funerals or some of those caskets had to be reopened to get the whole bodies in. We memorialized Dana that December. Dana wasn't buried until the following St. Patty's Day, or we got notified of St. Patty's Day, but it was in May. It isn't easy to go back and see your people and your friends and the families that have been touched. I went to a funeral where the guy, his wife, and his 2 kids were in the front row of the Catholic Church, standing room only. Sometimes we think this job is easy, it's fun, it's great, and it is. But it does come at a cost. If you're not prepared for that cost, you're going to pay for it. I don't care whether you're administration, or if you're an online person, if you're a city council member, if you're a mayor, it doesn't matter. We all represent the City of Vallejo Fire Department and the Police Department and the Emergency Services, along with the IBW. Take care of us because we're taking care of you. This is the first day of the rest of the history of the Vallejo Fire Department. How will you be remembered for your service to this city? Thank you.
Thank you, Gil, for your good words. As I said at the beginning of this, Semper Gumby, we always mean to remain flexible. We're going to have a little alteration in our events today. At the end of this event, we were going to play the pipes, ring the bell, and have a flyover. So if you guys can all remain silent for a few minutes, because the helicopters that we have to do the flyover are going to run out of fuel if we keep them over there. So they're going to do their flyover now, so keep an eye on the sky. Stand by. I believe if you guys direct your attention, they should be coming from Mariana. They're coming from that direction now? Okay. like to say thank you to the Reach helicopter and the California Highway Patrol for that flyover. Our next speaker is going to come up and lead us in blessing and prayer. Please welcome Deputy Fire Chief Mark Sharp.
Thank you all so much for coming out today to help us celebrate this 9/11 memorial. I want to thank all the dignitaries, thank our city employees, thank our guests, families, and friends for coming out with us. The mayor asked the question, who remembers what you were doing on the day of 9/11? And I can recall that I was working. We happened to come from an emergency run, and as the habit is, we turned on the news to see what was going on. And on that day, we saw, as many of the rest of us did, the events that were unfolding at that moment. And I can recall when one of the newscasters said that the World Trade Tower has collapsed. In my mind, I thought just the top portion had collapsed. I did not realize that the whole thing had come down. And as we realized it and began to see some of the footage of it, in our minds, we realized how many lives were lost on that day. We realized that not only public safety, emergency responders, but all of those workers who woke up that morning to go to work thinking that it was going to be another day as usual. And oftentimes we think that the day will be like that, but this day turned America upside down and things would never be the same. And so we want to just constantly be mindful that life, there's no guarantees to it, and we need to cherish every day that we've been given. When I thought about those lives that were lost, and not only on that day, but as already been mentioned, many of the rescue workers who went out to help out, many of them suffered great effects from the respiratory diseases that followed all the contaminated debris. But then not only that, when we think about it, sometimes we don't think about 9/11 until the day of, but all the families that have been impacted and will never be the same. And I'm quite certain there are some family members that think about it every day that they wake up. And so we want to be mindful of those families, the loss, our comrades. And what that does for us and what it did for America is it caused us to rethink about the way we do our day-to-day business, particularly when it comes to public safety. And I'm so happy to say that the Vallejo Fire Department was able to participate in some of the events this past weekend that occurred, which is called Urban Shield, which is really a readiness regional drill that allows public safety entities to begin to practice those high-risk, low-frequency events to make sure that we don't forget what took place on 9/11 and that we're prepared for any future endeavors. So I'm really happy to say that we were able to host the Red Area Command and we're able to make sure that we are prepared for future events. With those thoughts in mind, I'm going to ask you to stand and we're going to have a prayer. Our Father, our God in heaven, we are so thankful to you for allowing us to live in this country that we are living in. We're so thankful for all of the public safety agencies that are there to make sure that our citizens are safe. We're so thankful for allowing us to provide services to our people, dear Father, so that when events do happen, they are able to be mitigated with less of an impact that would have otherwise occurred had we not been there. We offer up a prayer to you on behalf of the many families that have been impacted, public safety entities that have been impacted, and just this country as a whole. We ask that they will be comforted on this day, knowing of the many well wishes that are going out on their behalf. We also pray for the current public safety personnel, for their safety, dear Father, because we too never know what a day may hold. We ask for your protection and your guidance. We ask that you will continue to allow elected officials to make policy and decisions that will benefit the whole, our citizens, the workers, and those who can make a great impact. We thank you for this time that we've been able to experience. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. You may be seated.
Thank you, Mark, for the prayer. Before we conclude our events today, I would like to remind everyone that after the ceremony, we do have lunch and refreshments. I believe we have quite a bit, so everybody should be good to go. We also have a piece of the World Trade Center. There's a TV screen over there above the windows behind all those firefighters there. This was generously lended to us by a resident, Donald McKinney. And he's allowed us to keep this at our fire department administration, and we get to honor it by displaying it at the fire station today. So I encourage everybody to go over there, take a look at it. Things that tend to touch you a little bit more when you actually get your hands on it, and you can see some of the destruction, if you haven't already, in the several years since 9/11. I'd like to thank everybody that came here today, all our dignitaries, city staff, firefighters, citizens, family, friends. To conclude our ceremonies, the Vallejo Fire Department Honor Guard are going to do one final presentation. Once this is concluded, the event is complete, and you will feel free to kind of move towards the refreshments. But first, please remain seated, and again, welcome the Vallejo Fire Department Honor Guard.
The men and women of today's fire service are confronted with a more dangerous work environment than ever before. We are forced to continually change our strategies and tactics to accomplish our tasks. Our methods may change, but our goals remain the same as they were in the past: to save lives and to protect property, sometimes at a terrible cost. This is what we do. This is our chosen profession. This is the tradition of the firefighter. The fire service of today is ever-changing. It is steeped in traditions 200 years old. One such tradition is the sound of a bell. In the past, as firefighters began their tour of duty, it was the bell that signaled the beginning of that day's shift. Throughout the day and night, each alarm was sounded by a bell, which summoned these brave souls to fight fires and place their lives in jeopardy for the good of their fellow citizens. And when the fire was out and the alarm had come to an end, it was the bell that signaled to all the completion of that call. When a firefighter had died in the line of duty, paying the supreme sacrifice, it was the mournful toll of the bell that solemnly announced the comrade's passing. Utilizing these traditions as symbols, which reflect honor and respect on those who have given so much and who have served so well. To symbolize the devotion that these brave souls had for their duty, a special signal of 3 rings, 3 times each, represents the end of our comrades' duties and that they will be returning to quarters. And so, to those who have selflessly given their lives for the good of their fellow man, their task is completed, their duty is well done. To our comrades, their last alarm, they are going home.
Please rise. Uniform personnel, attend, present, on.
I know nothing brings it home more to me than hearing the bagpipes and the ringing of the bells. So thank you to the Honor Guard. That does conclude our events today. We appreciate everybody coming. Please come on into the station. Those of you that are in the sun, get in the shade, have some refreshments, mingle with the firefighters, and take a look around. Thank you again for coming.